Most people think they know Blackbeard, the wild beard, the pistols, the ships. But the real story of Edward Teach is not just an adventure tale, it is a masterclass in psychological warfare. Blackbeard did not just sail the seas and steal treasure, he engineered a reputation so terrifying that entire crews surrendered without a single shot being fired. He understood something that most military commanders and world leaders never figure out, that the fear of a man can be more powerful than the man himself. Today, we are going inside the real story of the most feared pirate who ever lived. And what you are about to learn is going to completely change how you see him. Who was Edward Teach? Edward Teach was born sometime around 1680, most likely in Bristol, England. Very little is known about his early life, which is itself interesting, because a man who would become the most infamous pirate in history left almost no paper trail before the age of about 25. What we do know is that he served as a privateer during the War of Spanish Succession. A privateer was essentially a government-licensed pirate. You were given permission by the Crown to attack and rob enemy ships during wartime. When the war ended in 1713, that license expired, and thousands of trained sailors who had spent years learning how to attack ships were suddenly unemployed with no transferable skills and no prospects. Many of them turned to piracy. Edward Teach was one of them. He began his pirate career working under a captain named Benjamin Hornigold, operating out of the Bahamas. Within 2 years, he had his own ship. Within 3 years, he was the most feared man on the Atlantic Ocean. The question is how? The brand. Here is where the story gets fascinating. Blackbeard understood something fundamental about human psychology. He understood that reputation is a weapon, and he spent enormous amounts of time and energy deliberately constructing the most terrifying image he possibly could. Start with the beard itself. His beard was described by contemporaries as exceptionally large, black, and bushy. He grew it long and tied it into braids with ribbons. Before going into battle, he would weave slow, burning fuses into his hair and beard and light them. Think about what that looked like. A massive man charging toward you through cannon smoke with his face wreathed in smoldering fuses, smoke curling around his head, his eyes wild, his beard enormous and braided. He looked like something that had crawled out of hell itself, and that was entirely intentional. He also carried multiple weapons visibly on his body at all times. Accounts describe him wearing a bandolier of pistols across his chest. Some accounts say as many as 6 pistols, all loaded, all ready. He was not just a pirate, he was a walking symbol of destruction. And he cultivated that symbol with the precision of a modern brand strategist. The psychology of terror. Now here is the part that most history books skip over. Blackbeard almost never needed to actually fight. Historians have examined his raiding record carefully, and what they found is remarkable. In the vast majority of his raids, merchant ships surrendered before any significant violence occurred. He captured over 40 vessels during his career, and most of them gave up without a battle. Why? Because his reputation arrived before he did. Word traveled fast along trade routes and in port towns. Sailors talked, merchants gossiped. By the time Blackbeard's ship appeared on the horizon, most captains already knew exactly who he was. They knew the stories, they knew the image. They knew what he was capable of, and the rational decision, more often than not, was simply to surrender. This is the genius of what Blackbeard built. He invested in fear as a strategic asset. Every story that spread about him, whether true or exaggerated, made his next raid easier. Every merchant who surrendered without a fight saved him ammunition, preserved his crew, and added to the legend. He was not just a pirate, he was a psychological operation. The blockade of Charleston. In May of 1718, Blackbeard did something that no pirate before or since has ever attempted. He blockaded an entire city. Charleston, South Carolina was one of the most important ports in the American colonies at the time. Blackbeard positioned his fleet of 4 ships at the entrance to Charleston Harbor and simply waited. For an entire week, he stopped every ship entering or leaving the port. He captured 8 vessels. He took dozens of hostages, including prominent members of Charleston society. Then he sent a message to the colonial governor. He demanded a chest of medicine in exchange for the hostages. Not gold, not silver. Medicine. The governor, faced with a pirate holding his city's harbor hostage and threatening to execute prominent citizens and send their heads to the colonial assembly, complied. Blackbeard got his medicine, released the hostages mostly unharmed, and sailed away. He had just held an entire colonial city to ransom, and he did it with 4 ships and the weight of his reputation. The betrayal and the end. By late 1718, the British government had decided that Blackbeard needed to be stopped. The governor of Virginia, Alexander Spotswood, organized a secret naval expedition. He hired a lieutenant named Robert Maynard and sent him with 2 small sloops to find Blackbeard at his hideout in Ocracoke Inlet in North Carolina. On the morning of November 22, 1718, Maynard found him. What followed was one of the most ferocious close-quarters battles in pirate history. Blackbeard had deliberately run Maynard's lead ship aground on a sandbar. Then he pulled alongside and his crew boarded. Maynard had hidden most of his men below decks. When Blackbeard's crew came over the side expecting easy victory, they found themselves suddenly outnumbered. In the hand-to-hand fighting that followed, Blackbeard took 5 bullet wounds and more than 20 sword cuts before he finally fell. Maynard later wrote that Blackbeard did not go down until there was no blood left in his body. He was decapitated after death. His head was hung from the bowsprit of Maynard's ship as proof of the kill. He was 38 years old. The real legacy. Here is what most people miss about Blackbeard. His actual pirate career lasted less than 3 years. 3 years. In 3 years, he built a reputation so powerful that it has survived more than 3 centuries. He never found a legendary treasure. He never commanded a massive fleet. He never conquered a city or overthrew a government. What he did was master the art of perception. He understood that how people see you is often more powerful than what you actually do. He built a personal brand out of fear, spectacle, and strategic storytelling at a time when those concepts did not even have names. Modern marketers, military strategists, and leadership experts still study the psychological tactics Blackbeard used instinctively in the early 1700s. The man with the smoking beard and the loaded pistols was not just a criminal. He was one of the most effective psychological operators in history. Blackbeard did not conquer the seas through brute force. He conquered them through the minds of the people who feared him. And that might be the most powerful lesson his story leaves us with. The most effective weapon is not always the one you fire. Sometimes it is the one you never have to. If you want more dark history, strange facts, and life lessons hidden in stories nobody tells you in school, subscribe. New videos every week. And if you want to keep watching right now, the next video is right there. I will see you in it.